Hi guys, Pamo here, FTO track car update. We're in the middle of an ABS delete that's going on to my right hand side. As you can see, we've got a few brake lines which have been put in there already and a new prop valve. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but just to give you a little more of an update, behind me you'll see that we've got the engine and the gearbox now together as one piece. It's ready to go into the engine bay, but whilst we're doing this ABS delete, it's far easier to do it with no engine inside the car because we need access to the bulkhead. So I'm going to show you how to make up one of the brake lines and describe a little bit about what we've done down there so far. Okay guys, so in the engine bay here you've got your master cylinder obviously, and this normally will feed on an ABS car 2 feed lines which go to an ABS unit that sits in this sort of area next to the battery tray. To delete the ABS we obviously need to get rid of that, and that is a unit which looks somewhat like this stuff down here. So this entire piece of metal here is bolted onto the bulkhead of the car and the side of the car with the ABS pump in place, and we can remove the entire lot of that. We're actually in this track car putting the battery in the boot, guys, so we're going to get rid of the battery stay and everything. That gives us a load of space to play with in the engine bay, and allows us then to start moving things around. So what you can see here already is we've taken out the ABS prop valve. This is a 4-port ABS prop valve, and we've replaced it with a non-ABS one, a 6-port one. So we've got 2 feeds, one each side here coming in from the master cylinder all the way down this routing, and then we've got another feed here which is feeding the front driver's side brake, the off-side brake if you come in the UK, guys. And then actually we're lucky, the 2 rear pipes here meet up with the ABS prop valve, sorry, the standard prop valve already. So at the stage I'm at now, I've made all 3 of these lines. I'm quite happy with them. I'm going to now try and get a line to run from the passenger side front brake caliper, which is this connection here, and I think I'm going to route it from here underneath this hot water hose, across the gap above the fuel filter, down and then into the prop valve down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you making that brake line, flaring the brake line, and then hopefully fitting it by the end of the video, guys. We'll move over to the bench and I'll show you how that's done. So on the bench here I've got my brake pipe. Now this is conifer, it's not a copper brake pipe. It's slightly better than the copper, it lasts a bit longer and doesn't risk breaking under stress like copper does. It's nice and bendy. What we're going to do is we're going to sort of manipulate that by hand. I've got my brake pipe flaring tool, all the associated dies, the cutter, which is really quite important to cut the brake pipe nice and square, and then these here that you can see are the old bits of pipe that we've cut off and I've used for practicing on and just making things together. So what we'll do is we'll take the conifer pipe, we'll go back over to the engine bay and we'll get an idea of how long we need to cut this pipe. Okie dokie, so if we take the conifer pipe, obviously it's nice and twisted up, so we'll try and straighten a piece of this out and get a wee bit of a length going on. Right, now as we said, we want to come from this brake pipe, we want to come down a couple of inches at least. We need a straight part just straight after the union, so we'll take my thumb there and we'll come across the bulkhead. So I'm just eyeballing this, guys, I don't have to be exact. I would say to about where my left hand thumb is there, looks good. We then want to go down from that by about 3 inches, I'd say, so let's go another 3 inches along and then across by about 3 inches. So I reckon that about this much conifer pipe will be enough. What we'll always do, because you can't add it on, is we'll give it a little bit extra. So I'm going to give it another few inches of conifer just to give me a wee bit extra to play with. Right, so I'm happy now we've got our length of pipe. I'm going to take it back over to the bench and we'll put some ends on it with some flares, give it a nice cut. Okay guys, right, so we take a cutting tool, about where the finger is marked, I'm going to get this onto the pipe. This simply slots over it. You should be able to just about see in there. If I just then tighten this up, this works as a principle of having a little disc cutter which is forced against the pipe. So we tighten the knurled joint as nice and tightly and we just spin this around the pipe, guys. So as we spin it, it will begin to cut a groove into the pipe and it will start to loosen off. So I can now feel it loosening. I'll stop now and I'll give it another little nip up and carry on. It's exactly the same way you cut copper pipes in your house if you're ever putting gas central heating or hot water in. There we go, it's popped off. Right, so we can put the extra to the side and we end up then with a really nice cut on the brake pipe, which is going to give us a good flare at the end. Okay, so in this piece of pipe we want a male and a female end on the flare. The female end is going to join the existing brake pipe that we've got on the car. The male end is going to go into the prop valve, the proportioning valve. So I have a bag of parts here. Doesn't matter which end you start with, but the one thing you've got to remember is always put your connection on first. It's dead easy to put a flare on it and then go, oh, I forgot to put my connector on. So you take the connector. I have one of these brake flight flaring tools. I find this much easier to use than one of the clamps that you get with a U-shaped clamp. I think this thing works excellently. So it's a very, very simple process. We just take the brake pipe, force it into the die. It doesn't matter how far in the die it actually goes at this point, because we're going to adjust that in a second. We tighten it up finger tight with the bolts, just like so. And then if you've got one of the same brake pipe flaring tools, you'll have a nut that looks a little bit like this with a flat end on it. This simply screws in to the end of your handle die. Make sure we get it in straight. And what we're going to do is we're going to screw this in so that we get exactly the right depth that this brake pipe goes into the die. So when we get our flare, it comes out the same each time. So that just goes in finger tight, and then we can undo the whole lot here once we're happy with it. Take this out. Right, and then what we want to do is we want to get a 10mm spanner onto these two bolts on top and really tighten this up so that the brake pipe's gripped absolutely beautifully inside the hand tool here. So we'll go all the way like that, and then we'll turn these really nice and tight. Right, that's our brake pipe clamped. Okay, so now we've got the actual forming tool here, and this has got two ends. It's got a sort of indented end for a bubble flare, and it's got a conical end for an open flare. What we're going to do is we'll always start off with the bubble first. So we dip it in a little bit of this special grease that comes with the tool and simply screw it into this end. Now this nut here is a 16mm nut, so all we do is tighten that up, and as you get to a certain point you'll start it feeling to engage the actual brake pipe. Okay, that's screwed all the way in. And that does us a bubble flare. Now that flare is not good for the Mitsubishi FTO because you need a conical flare. If you look down inside it, you should actually be able to see that the mating surface in there is a cone. So if we do a bubble flare, it won't sit in there properly. We need to make sure that there's an open flare so that it will mate around that hole perfectly. So if we take then the other end of our flaring tool, the conical end, and we then force that down into here, this is going to open up that flare beautifully. So we can now take all the die apart. And with any luck, if everything's gone well, we should have a nice conical flare inside of here. There we go guys, so that's a nice open conical flare. Right, so now we can do the other end. The other end we said we wanted a female connector on. And because this is mating up to a brake pipe which has got a bubble flare on the end, we again want a conical flare. Always again put your end on first, put your piece in the tool. It's exactly the same process guys. We give the tool a little tighten down, finger tight at first. Okay, and then we've got our nice open flare there, which is going to sit just inside of this cup. Okay, so we've got our brake pipe. We're pretty happy with the length of it. We'll now take it over to the car and we'll bend it into shape and make it mate up with the actual brake pipe on the car guys. Okay, so we're back over at the car guys. What we want to do, I think, as I said, I'm going to feed it straight underneath this heat pipe here. I want to get a bit of a bend in it first and foremost. We'll just basically screw that in to get an eyeball is where we're going to start off from. Okay, then we want to come up and over. I'm going to try and use this clip if I can do. And I'm going to make a turn here just after the clip. Okay guys, so the eagle-eyed of you will have noticed that even though I said you wanted to go a little bit too far, then I went far too far and I couldn't rebend it into shape, so I've just nipped a bit more off the brake pipe and reflared an end on, and hopefully now we should be able to give this the final few bends just to get it to mate up with the proportioning valve. So we will now take a bit of an eyeball down here. I want to, I think, bend it away slightly, and then where my thumb is I'm going to make another bend, so I'm going to take this off again and we're going to bend it the opposite way. Okay, so it looks like we're pretty close. Okay, so I'm pretty happy then that that's not under too much stress. What I'll now do is I'll tighten up the joints. Do a different spanner for that one. So just tighten up all the connections now, guys. So there we are. Just check the rest of my connections that we did the other day. They're all nice and tight. Yep. Everything is snug. And then we'll come back over to this one. Make sure that we're tight on here. Right guys, there we go. So now I'm pretty happy this brake line doesn't touch the firewall, it's not touching any of the other pieces of equipment here. It's clipped in nice and tightly. Right, so we've now got 4 new brake lines for our ABS module. Now, that's basically it done. Apart from the electronics, there is an ABS ECU. We're going to be disconnecting that. I'll be removing the light bulb for the ABS unit inside the dash, and then on this particular car we don't have ABS sensors on the rear wheels. We've used the hubs for that for another vehicle which we've got, so I don't need to worry about any other sensors. I could remove the ABS sensor from the front wheels. I probably will do that before I put everything back together, but hopefully that's our ABS now done. All we need to do is obviously bleed the brakes and get on then with putting the engine into this car for the next video. So check back guys for another episode of the FTO track car, where hopefully things get a bit more exciting and we can put the heart of this beast back in the engine bay. Thanks for watching guys, hopefully you can do this. Paymo out.